Okay, in this video, we're going to have a look at the advanced filter functionality within Excel. So I've actually just reproduced part of that table for the purpose of this exercise. You'll notice that I'm only starting it on row 6, right, instead of on the top. And the reason for that is you'll see that we need to enter in a criteria range on the same sheet we're going to use here. And it's quite important that that range isn't entered in line with your data range, because when you're going to be filtering, it's going to hide, it can hide certain columns, and we wouldn't want it to hide the criteria range. This will all become clear as we do the example. All right, so let's assume now we basically go to data, and instead of using the normal auto filter, which is this option over here, we're going to use the advanced filter option, right? And let's assume that we wanted to look at the Eastern Cape region, right? So what we do with the advanced filter is we're actually going to show the criteria separately. So in this area over here, I'm just going to paste the word region, all right? I could have typed it in, but I'll just copy and paste it. And I'll say that the region I effectively want to look at is, we actually put in the region we want to look at. So let's assume we want to look at, okay, let's say the Northern Cape. And I'm just going to paste it in there. I could have typed this in as well, just to note, right? So that's going to be our criteria. Our criteria is that we want to filter this list for the Northern Cape, line items. So the way I do it now is I go to the data option on the menu. I select the advanced filter under sort and filter. And now it says, the first thing it says, do I want to filter this list in place? It's automatically picked up the list. So I was in this, I'd selected a cell within this table list, and you can see it's picked up A6 to E51, which if I scroll down, is effectively the full list, right? So it's automatically picked up the list. And it says, so now we're basically saying this is the list, but what do we want to do? Filter this list in place, which is the normal way of doing it, or do we want to copy the results to another location? So we're going to filter it in place, which means it's going to filter within this table. Later on, I will show you how the copy to another location works. The criteria range, I'm just going to delete this, and we're going to go in here and say this is our criteria, right? So I'm basically saying the criteria that we have to apply when filtering this list, right? This is the list range. This is the criteria. So the criteria range refers to the particular conditions we want to apply for the filter. You'll see this is grayed out because we're not copying to another location. You don't really choose where to copy to. The one thing that you'll pick up immediately with the advanced filter, which wasn't available with the auto filter, is that you can select unique records only. So you don't have to show, say if there's duplicate records, it won't show both of them. But we'll go through an example of that later as well. All right, so right now we're just going to go region Northern Cape and say okay, and immediately you can see it's picking up the Northern Cape. Now to basically remove that filter, if I click on this, if I can click on the clear, which basically then would bring the it will remove the filter and actually show you all the line items again. Let's assume that I wanted to look at Eastern Cape and Northern Cape. Now how do I do that using this filter range? Well, the way to do it is I would now on a separate row say let's actually put in the Eastern Cape. So I want this is the one condition. It can be Northern Cape or it can be Eastern Cape. So each row represents a different alternative. Think of each row as being an or. So Northern Cape or Eastern Cape, right? Now, if I go in and I clicking back here in this list range, I click on advanced, right? And you can see it automatically picks up the list range. When I click on the criteria range though, it's saying H2 to H3, which was the initial criteria range. So when you make any changes to the criteria range, make sure that you go and reselect it because it's got to go H2 to H4 this time. And if I say okay, and I just scrolled up, you can see I've got Northern Cape as well as the Eastern Cape. And you can see obviously here, all the other ones, other rows are hidden. So it works in that way, the same way that the auto filter works, except that the filters are basically not now in these column headings, but they're in a separate space, which the one advantage is this is actually easier to see what's being filtered, especially when we filter across multiple, multiple rows. Let's say, for example, we wanted to look at we wanted to filter people in the Northern Cape and the Eastern Cape, but who were more than 3 years with the company, or let's say more than 4 years with the company. So the way we would do that is we would now add in an additional column here of years, right, and say greater than 4. So using the greater than sign, and also so I just want to show you something. If I only put greater than 4 right here, right, you'll see we've got two Northern Capes, right? One is 3 years and one is 4 years, right? So if you only want to look at greater than 4, and I apply now using this criteria, let's just, you'll see what will happen. So I'm going to select this, we leave the list as is, right? In fact, before I do that, in fact, we don't actually necessarily need to clear the range because it's still picking up the full range. You can see it's going till E51, even though it's hidden. So the criteria range, however, remember I had H2 to H4. So every time when I add things to the criteria range, like I've added years over year, I've got to go and reselect it. So let's reselect and include the years. And if I say now, okay, right, you can see, remember the Northern Cape is greater than 4 years. However, you'll notice that the Eastern Cape is a separate condition. Each row is a separate condition. So this is saying, give me all the Northern Cape that's greater than 4 years, but all the Eastern Cape irrespective of the years. Because we've left years blank here, you can see that the Eastern Cape is showing things that are under 4 years, like these two, right? So if we want the Eastern Cape to also be over 4 years, everything should be over 4 years, and it's got to be either Northern Cape or Eastern Cape, then we would add in the greater than 4 there as well. So the way to read this is, give me all the Northern Cape that is greater than 4 years, right? So Northern Cape and greater than 4. So when you have multiple things on the same row, every one of those conditions must be met. It must be Northern Cape and greater than 4. And when you go to the next row, or it can be Eastern Cape and greater than 4. Now remember, once I actually changed the Eastern Cape and greater than 4, it didn't automatically remove, for example, these two, which are actually 3 years, right? The reason is you have to go and click again on the advanced, right, and click on OK again to basically redo the filtering. And now you can see now it's only giving you Northern Cape and Eastern Cape, which are all greater than 4 years. So hopefully that makes sense. The other thing to do is let's look at how you would do a sales, right? So I'm just going to I'm going to add in sales. Now you notice you only need to add in the names of the columns here in your criteria range that you're actually filtering on. So if I wasn't filtering on sales, which I wasn't doing up till now, I didn't need to have it in the range. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this filter, right? And let's say we want to do all sales, right? I'm going to delete this, in fact. So I'm going to delete those. We just want everything where the sales, for example, is greater than, let's say greater than 10,000, right? So things like 2,000, the 895, that should all be gone. So now if I go and I click on the advanced, right? Again, remember we've changed the criteria range. So let's go and reselect it. So we reselect the criteria range and we say, okay. And you can see now all of these cells are greater than 10,000, right? Let's say, however, I only wanted to look at between 10,000 and 20,000. So how do I tell, using this criteria range, how do I actually tell Excel to filter everything that's greater than 10,000, which is here, but also less than 20,000? And the way to do this is you actually have to add in another sales column over here, and in this one you basically put in less than 20,000 if it's under 20,000. So what this is going to do is going to say all of this, remember, is treated as a single criteria. So sales has to be greater than 10,000 and sales has to be less than 20,000. So let's see how that works. Again, we click on the advanced. Remember, we don't normally have to, as long as we're in this list range, it's automatically selecting the full range, but we usually have to go again and change the criteria range. So I'll do that over there again. And we now say okay. And you can see now all of these numbers basically are between 10,000 and 20,000, greater than 10,000 and less than 20,000. Right, so let's assume we wanted to say, give me everything that's greater than 10,000 or less than 20,000, but at the same time, give me also everything in the free state. Doesn't matter what the sales are, you would add that as a separate line. And now we would go in and say, let's go and select the criteria range again. So what it's done, it's added this particular one in, you can see, because it's giving you everything of free state, even so the less than 10,000, greater than 10,000 and less than 20,000 doesn't apply to this row over here. So this row is just basically saying, give me anything with free state. So all the free state items are in, including this one over here, which is greater than 20,000 sales. But for everything else, it's basically saying it's got to be greater than 10,000 or less than 20,000. So you can see that you can create much more complex criteria using this methodology here that's not really possible with the autofilter. The autofilter is very quick, but it doesn't give you the same level of flexibility as the advanced filter.